everyone. This is Chris Grosso with the Healing Journey web series presented by Toivo by Advocacy Unlimited. My guest today is my dear friend Amy B. Scher. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
So I want to read you guys Amy's bio quickly before we get into this conversation that I'm very excited to have with Amy. So Amy B. Scher is an LA-based author and energy therapist. Amy uses energy therapy techniques to help those experiencing emotional or physical challenges to heal permanently and completely. She has been featured in major publications including CNN, Curve Magazine, Psych Central, Elephant Journal, The Good Men Project, the San Francisco Book Review, and was named one of Advocate's 40 Under 40 for 2013. Her new book, How to Heal Yourself When No One Else Can, has just been released. Most importantly, she lives by the self-created motto, when life kicks your ass, kick back. Hey, Amy.
Hi, Chris.
So thank you for being on the show and taking the time to join me today.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, I've known Amy for, it's been a couple of years now at least, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and I consider her a dear friend. And you have this new book out that we'll be talking about shortly, which I'm very excited to share with viewers because it's a great book. I mean, and endorsed by Bernie Siegel, and who I know a lot of people at Toivo are a fan of, and Pam
Yeah.
Grout, who's the huge New York Times bestselling author, and I think even one of the Chopras. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sanjeev, who's
Sanjeev.
at Harvard Medical.
Look at you go. So it is a tremendous book, but we will get into that in a few minutes. But first, I wanted to start with you. Knowing you, I know that you have quite a story of your own healing journey, which you wrote your first book about, and I would love to start there, so you could share with viewers. We talk a lot on the series about addiction and recovery from that. And I recently interviewed a gang member, and his addiction was violence and power. And so I love getting these different areas of healing, and the different models that it could fall under. So let's talk a bit about yours, which is definitely different than anything I've chatted with people about.
Yeah. Although, as you're saying that, I'm thinking that so many of us are addicted to physical illness. And I say this coming from a place where I could see that in myself. So
Mm.
I'm not using it as, something we want to have,
Right.
but physical illness or anxiety, these challenges in our life always, in my experience, serve a purpose. And part of the healing from these types of experiences, as I've really experienced them, is figuring out what purpose that challenge is serving in your life, and then working your healing around sort of undoing that so you don't need that in your life anymore. And so I think it actually does fit in a little bit with the, theme of addiction and that. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story.
Awesome. Cool.
So, when I was in my early 20s, I started to have some severe physical issues, and nobody could really figure out what was going on. I had migraine headaches and digestive issues and things that seemed disconnected, but actually in the end it turned out, our bodies are so connected and everything in them is working together or not working together.
Yes.
And so nobody could really figure out what happened. So I was taking several different medications, one for migraines, one for digestive things. And in my mid 20s, I started working for Harley Davidson as a marketing director. Total dream job, so much fun, coolest
Harley.
people.
Woo.
Yeah, super fun. And by that time, I thought, well, everything's perfect in my life, right? I have this dream job. I'm in my mid 20s. I was traveling. I was in a relationship, um, and I started having problems walking. I started tripping a lot, and within really probably a month of the initial symptoms of tripping and having problems walking, I had just full nerve pain throughout my arms and legs and was starting to lose function in those areas. And so back to the doctor I went and started sort of a barrage of major medical testing at the Mayo Clinic and all these very big institutions, UCLA, USC, all the biggies that probably people who have had physical illness will recognize. And nobody could find anything, as it goes often. And I was very, very focused on finding that thing that was wrong with me. And eventually, a few years later, I was diagnosed with Lyme disease, which comes from being bitten by a tick, although there are other ways you can get it as well, other insects and other ways, but basically primarily being bitten by a tick. And it transferred a bacteria to me that into me that infiltrated my whole system. So by the time I was diagnosed correctly, which can take a very, very long time with Lyme disease, because it mimics so many other things like multiple sclerosis and many different diseases. It had, it had really destroyed my whole system. I had lesions on my brain, which means that I had damage on my brain. I had nerve damage. I had full-blown arthritis in all of my joints. I had cardiac issues at the age of 27. I had all these heart problems, and the list goes on. I don't really need to delve into the list, but many, many days I couldn't get out of bed.
It was a bad scene. We could put it like that.
It was a very bad scene. And so I was happy, though, to have a diagnosis that I thought was going to fix everything, right? Because once you can put sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't know what to do about it. But it didn't quite turn out that way. I started medical treatment, and very, very intense medical treatment for the Lyme disease. Now, when people catch Lyme disease early on, you can take antibiotics for a short period of time and usually don't ever have to worry about it again. But because I never knew I was bitten by a tick, which can be common, by the time it was caught in me, it had gotten so far into my system that, a couple of weeks of antibiotics wasn't going to do much. So I was on IV antibiotics, though. I had a port put in my arm. I still have my little scar, and the IV went in toward my heart, and they pumped antibiotics in that way. I was on a lot of different treatments, and nothing really seemed to help. And so I was sort of, in my mid to late 20s, just so sick, thinking, I was on permanent disability by that point, and just thinking, am I going to live or die? And which one is scarier at this point? Because I was so sick. And I found out about a treatment in India, in Delhi, India, where they use embryonic stem cells to help repair the body. It's the only place, or at that time, it was the only place that you could have that treatment in the world. And I decided it would probably either kill me or cure me. I wasn't sure which one it would do, but that I had to take the leap of faith and try it because there was nothing left. The doctors in the United States had sort of said, sorry, we don't know what to do anymore.
And just to put some context around this, what year roughly is it at this point for you?
So this is like 2007.
Okay, thank you.
2007. Cool. So I ended up taking this leap of faith, going to India, land of total chaos and beauty and everything else in the world. And I was treated using stem cells at this tiny little clinic. There were, I think, 20 patients, this tiny little clinic in Delhi, in this crazy, I arrived in a wheelchair. It was just such an experience, very humbling after being in sort of state-of-the-art hospitals in the United States. And I spent 2 months there, a little bit more than 2 months. And my parents went with me on this initial part of the trip, and then they ended up leaving later in the trip. But by then I was doing a lot better. And I actually left India walking on my own, and actually running because I almost missed my flight on the way back. So I was off of all my heart medication. I was off of much of my pain medication. I just was doing a lot better. My body was really in healing and repair mode. And for a year or so, I did really, really well. It wasn't absolutely perfect, but I was far from where I started when I arrived in India. And so a year or so later, I started having some really strange symptoms again. I started having tingling in my legs, and I was really fatigued, and some strange symptoms again. So back to the doctor I went, and at that time I was in London for a stretch of time. And so I was trying to find new doctors and went to a hospital there and got all these tests. And once again, everybody said, I don't know, nothing's coming up on the test. Yet I was having these symptoms. And at that point, I took a deep breath and I just went, there has to be something more than what's going on in my body here. I keep manifesting these various symptoms at different times in my life, and the only common denominator is me. I can't really deny that. And so that helped me to pivot in a different direction on my healing journey and stop seeking out answers and cures from the medical profession and start really looking at myself to figure out why this was happening.
Mm.
And that was sort of the next segment of my very long journey.
Right, right. And so is this where it leads you into the energy work? Which,
Yes.
okay, because that's what you're known for today is, your
Yes.
energy healing and energy therapy. So let's talk a little bit about your introduction into that because
Sure.
honestly, a lot of people that I've talked to, I'm not very well versed in energy therapy. I know a bit about it, but I'm
Okay.
far from a professional. But I know a lot of people are skeptical towards it. However, I also know a lot of people swear by it. So
Yeah.
tell me a bit about your experience with it. Were you at all skeptical walking into it or were you just very open? What was your
Yes.
experience?
I'm a very science-minded person. I'm a
Sure.
Virgo sun sign. I like things to make sense. I
Mm.
like things to be logical. And I really like to see why things work and how they work. And I like studies and I like all that stuff that
Yeah.
the science world sort of fits into.
Yeah.
But when you're so at the end of your rope and you have nowhere else to go, it humbles you. You become open to lots of things you thought were crazy before.
You're
And that was cool. That was a cool part of my journey.
you're preaching to the choir. In
Yes,
a
right.
different set of circumstances, I completely understand what you're saying.
Right. So I
Yeah.
even say that on my website when I talk about my story a little bit. I say, I was never into anything woo woo. And now I swear by energy therapy. How woo woo did I go? Even
Right.
though there's so much science to back up energy healing
Yeah.
now and energy therapy, it's still, it's so far from where I came from that
Sure.
that it seemed like a stretch. But anyway, so when I was in London, what I did was I found a Chinese medicine practitioner, an acupuncturist, an herbalist, and that was sort of my beginning education in energy therapy because Chinese medicine doctors or Chinese medicine practitioners work with the energy system in your body. We all think we're physical and we're just made of
Hmm.
this, but we really are a complex network of energies. And this is apparent more even in the medical community when, something's wrong with your heart and they do an EKG, or something might be going on with your head and they do an EEG. They're really measuring energy. They're measuring that in your body, which is energy. And so I sort of grasped onto those little, well, when the Chinese medicine doctors are saying that there are energy pathways in the body called meridians. They go in all kinds of different directions. And when they're blocked or stagnant, when the energy is not flowing, we feel them as symptoms in the body. So the way you can think about it is there's, for instance, an energy meridian the stomach meridian, where the energy pathway runs all the way up your body and it actually comes up and goes around your eyes, sort of in a circle. Okay. So that pathway runs through your stomach, up your body, in your face, around. And gets blocked for any reason, it can create physical symptoms anywhere in the line that it follows. So a lot of people that have sinus infections or sinus problems, they also have stomach problems because that energy flow is disrupted. So their stomach and their sinuses aren't getting the energy flow they need to get to stay healthy. And so while that didn't sound scientific to me when she explained it, it did sort of make sense.
Right.
And it was true to my own experience. And so I got acupuncture, I took some herbs, and things started to shift for me. And I went, okay, well, maybe this energy thing, there's something to it after all.
Right.
Do you want, sorry,
No,
do
no,
you
I
want,
was going to say right. So okay, so you're having your first kind of introduction to it and it's
yep.
resonating and that's awesome.
Yep. And I
So
kept going. I would go a couple times a week and I felt like, oh, okay, like it's kind of helping. But the thing that I didn't like was that I had to keep going because I needed to keep going to that practitioner. And I realized for me personally, because in the past I was so fixated on everyone else finding the answer and helping me get better, that this wasn't healthy for me. And I'm a little bit of a shortcut person. I thought, wait a second, instead of boiling these herbal teas and going 2 or 3 times a week, why don't I figure out what's making my energy get stuck in the first place?
Sure.
And if I fix that, maybe I won't have to boil, rotten smelling tea for my whole life. Even though it worked, the apartment was like infused with this
Oh man.
dirt smell.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I decided to start reading and start investigating on why energy gets stuck. And that's where I really learned that who we are as people, how we see ourselves, how we see the world, whether we let go of old emotions or we hang on to them, those things interplay with the energy system in the body and can create blockages or stagnant energy, which then manifest as symptoms. So it was very eye-opening for me to see what the root of this stuff was, so that I could work on that, because it made more sense to do that than to keep trying to stay on top of treatments, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Oh no, it makes perfect sense. Right. So I love that you're talking. You want to go inward.
Yeah,
What's happening inside? Why does this keep manifesting in its various ways?
yeah,
Which I'm, the lens that I look through, and I recognize it's a lens still, but like spiritually, it's
yes.
points right back inside. What's going on in here, bringing us back inside. So I think that correlates very nicely.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And I should say I don't want to act like I wanted to go inside.
sure.
I'm still one of those people, even with clients, I always say, I mean, I don't love talking about my emotions. It's not part of my natural personality,
Yes.
but I realize, we don't need to dwell, but we do need to express ourselves.
Yeah.
So going inward for me was so much scarier than trying a million different medications. I would have rather done that, but my experience showed me that wasn't what was going to work. And so I came to a place where what was left was me.
Right, right, and I thank you for saying that, because
Sure.
I try to be transparent in what as well in all that I do, and there are times where I don't want to meditate. Like I don't want to, but I
Yeah.
understand how good it is for me. And years and years and years of doing it, I see a significant difference in my life. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm perfect, and I do it every day, because there are days where I literally can't do it. But there are days where I can do it, and I do it begrudgingly.
Yeah.
I don't walk in there like, it's time to meditate. Though there are those days too where it is like, time to meditate. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
life, right? You
Yeah,
take
I
whatever
love
is.
that. I
Yeah,
love that you share that, because I tell that to my clients too. Like, you don't have to like doing the emotional. I mean, it's better if you have a positive experience,
sure.
but it's not always fun. And even to this day, I still do energy work on myself as far as maintenance to stay healthy emotionally and physically. Sometimes I would rather just sit on the couch and eat a bowl of pasta and watch a TV show. And sometimes I do that because you know
Mm,
what? That's healing and good for us too.
it
So
is.
it's not always that we want to, that we can tap into that part of ourselves easily all the time, but it's
Right.
necessary for sure.
Right, and that's I love that you say that, because another thing I will try to tell people is learn to be compassionate with yourself in the process. Be gentle, not overly gentle, because you have to
Yeah.
cultivate some discipline. But yeah, like be easy, like be
Yeah.
gentle with yourself, because it's a process, it's a practice. It's not always easy. It's often more difficult than not. But
Yeah.
as long as you're showing up and doing the work, that's what matters. So
That's absolutely true. And so when I looked inside, this is a perfect segue to what I found. When I
yeah,
turned inward, what I found as far as the real truth of healing from everything I read and everything I looked at about my own life, sort of gently analyzing, like, how the heck did I get here? Like, I know other people that seem to have, maybe not have had perfect lives or have some emotional stuff, and they aren't this sick. This doesn't keep happening to them. And really, I found that the core of well being is accepting who we really are
mm,
and being easy and light with that person.
mm.
And really, and I was not easy and light with the person I was. That goes back to my Virgo sun sign. Like, if I was good at being critical about something, it was me.
Yeah, I understand.
And so I really started to go back to look at the emotional and spiritual aspect of myself and to figure out what wasn't working, what was creating this stress, really this stress on my physical body, because our physical bodies are really the sum of what's going on inside, in our spirit, in our thought patterns, in our emotional selves. And when I looked at it, it was a little bit scary. It was a little bit
Sure.
scary. And it's not that I've had, we hear so much about trauma now and how people who have traumatic childhoods, can manifest physical illness, more than others. I don't think I had a terribly traumatic childhood. I don't think, I can't pinpoint one thing or another that caused it. I think it's just shit happens in life, and we process it, or we don't process it, and it sticks with us or it doesn't stick with us. And some people end up having to go inward and look closer at who we are, and some people don't. And maybe we inherit some stuff from our parents, and maybe we don't, and maybe it's this or that. And at the end, it didn't really matter. It didn't matter how I got where I got, because when I really was trying to figure that out, it only made me more frustrated. At some
Right.
point, I just decided that I was where I was. And even if I didn't understand it, I was going to trust it was for a damn good reason
Yes.
and just work on moving to a better place. And that's why I really started to work with energy therapy on my own.
Yeah. Well, before we get a little more into I
Sure.
love what you just said because I resonate completely with it. I mean, I'm often asked, I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol, and people often ask, well, why did you turn to it? What purpose were they serving? And of course, there's the obvious,
Yep.
it was just, I was able to drop out, it was less pressure and,
Hmm.
on and on it goes. But to this day, I still haven't pinpointed one. And I think you nailed it. It's maybe some things happen that stuck. Maybe some of it's genetic, maybe this, maybe that. But you're right. Like the important part is where I ended up and learning to take or grow from that place, use it as a catalyst to heal. And of
Yeah.
course, part of that healing is going in and working with the wreckage of my past and having to do some digging.
Yeah.
But, finding that balance between the digging and healing and also being here right now today with myself and what's happening. So
Yeah.
very well said. And
Yeah, and when we were talking earlier about addiction, and I mentioned, well, illness can be an addiction. I
mhm,
think for me, I used it as a way to be in bed, to feel safe in the world,
yeah,
to give myself a freaking break, because there's no way I was going to do that
yeah,
unless I was sick and literally could not do anything.
right.
I mean, it really served a very good purpose in my life, as much as I was consciously trying to get out of that space of illness. Subconsciously, it was seriously working for me in many, many ways, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
Caroline Meese uses the term
yes,
woundology, and that's a big one because it becomes comfortable. It's what we know. It's a safety blanket, like you said. So,
yep. And I didn't like it, but it worked.
right.
And it worked like nothing else works. It's harder to have to say no to people when I'm a person who says yes to everything.
Right.
It's harder to accept myself when I can't do something than to be say I couldn't have tried in the first place. It is harder to be healthy than it is to be sick. It's
Mm,
just honest.
yeah.
And I there had to be part of me though that was ready to do the harder part, to choose the harder way for a better life. And finally something inside of me just went, yeah, I'll choose that.
Mm, I'm glad you did.
Thank you, me too.
So, I want to share something that I read on your website, and I thought this could be a very interesting topic for us to explore a bit. I'm going to read
Sure.
it, and then I think we'll break it down into two parts. You write on your website, I use energy therapy techniques to help people experiencing emotional or physical challenges to heal permanently and completely. And then after years of struggling from illnesses, much of which you've already talked about, Lyme disease, etc., and what I described as anxiety, I discovered answers to the important question: why do some people heal from emotional and physical issues while others don't? And that's a profound question to ask.
Yeah.
So let's break this down into two parts. Let's start first with these energy techniques we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk about those a little further? Is there as well as sharing potentially a practice. I love to give viewers something to take away that they can start to bring into their life. So we'll start with that, and then we'll jump into the second part. So let's dive into that first.
Sure. So there are many, many energy therapy techniques and energy modalities, energy healing techniques. They all mean the same thing. I use the term energy therapy techniques, but for everybody who's watching, you can call them anything they want. They move these sets of techniques move energy, move stuck energy in the body that are creating emotional or physical symptoms. So I use several different ones. Some are ones that I learned during my healing journey, and some are ones that I actually created once I knew more about how energy worked and once I started working with clients, as I do now, to help others heal. And so really it's anything that helps stuck energy move in your body. I'll show you a couple of quick things.
Great.
Just because then everybody can use them at home. One of them is called thymus tapping. And I'm just going to sit up a little bit so you can see where the thymus gland is. I'm going to move my There's a gland about an inch below where the collarbone is. So if you put your finger where the collarbone is and go about an inch below, perfect. There's a gland there called the thymus gland. The thymus gland is the master gland of your immune system. Big, big gland in your body. It's also connected very closely to your energy system that runs throughout your body. And by tapping gently on the thymus gland, we can help send a force of energy down through the body to clear blockages, emotional blockages, or energetic blockages. The thymus gland, as you can probably see or feel, is set in the area of the heart, where so much of our everything comes from.
Yes.
And so tapping on the thymus gland not only instigates or sort of gives the thymus gland, the immune system, a boost, a manual boost. By doing this can improve your immune system. It also helps us flush or move stuck energy out of our body. So when you're feeling strong emotion that doesn't feel good, instead of running away from it, sitting with it and tapping the thymus gland will actually help you process it and move it out of your body so it doesn't get stuck.
Wow. How long would you say someone would generally do this? Is it an intuitive thing, or is there
Yeah, so you could tap for 15 to 30 seconds, or if you were really sitting with the emotion, you could really tap while you were meditating. You could just It's sort of a meditative thing to do. But if you've ever seen somebody that gets really nervous or gets bad news, sometimes you see them flutter their chest.
Sure.
It's a natural thing we do. And I think it's because your body's trying to call you to tend to that thymus gland to help dispel the trauma.
Wow.
So just tapping, it's super easy. And this is a good one to teach kids. Any strong emotion, when they're feeling angry and they want to throw something, make them jump around and tap this gland, because that will help them, that will allow them to experience the emotion without getting in trouble and help them move it through their body so they're not still angry and throwing things 2 hours later.
Wow. I honestly actually feel something after
Yeah.
doing that. It's crazy.
It's
Wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it's easy. I'm so about easy because I'm the first to admit I can be lazy about spiritual and energetic practices. Like,
Sure.
I'm just like a busy. I like to do a lot of things and I just don't have a whole lot of patience. So all of the techniques I use don't require, 4 hours of practice a day, because they never would have worked for me.
Right, right. And I think that is so important, especially for, it's a very fast-paced culture we're in.
Yeah.
And not to say that this is great on the spiritual path, but, people are very interested in instant gratification. We want what we want when we want it.
Yeah.
But to a certain extent, something like this, if that's really going to help, which I could tell it already did help a bit, awesome, then so be it. That's great.
Yeah. And I think when we don't do what we're supposed to do for ourselves or what we want to do for ourselves, it's another reason to beat ourselves up. And so if we can find practices that keep us present, keep us working with the spiritual part of ourselves, which is the whole part of ourselves, but if we can find things to integrate into our everyday life, we're going to be more successful. We're going to be happier with ourselves because we're doing the things we need to do. And doing this works, and it's It's quick, and you can do it while, if you're careful, while you're driving or while you're watching TV. I even tell people to do this if they're watching something really violent on TV. Just do this so that you calm your body and move that energy so it doesn't get stuck.
Wow. Dig it.
One more quick tip about the thymus tapping. So you can do this, doesn't matter how you tap. But if you're doing it in a time where you feel a lot of fear, tapping with a flat hand in the rhythm of a heartbeat is very helpful. All that means is you tap 1, 2, and then the third time a little firmer. Dun, 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 or whatever feels like a comforting rhythm to you, but that can really help when you're in a place of fear.
I love
So
that.
easy.
Yeah, I love that. Did you have another one you want to share, you said? Or
Yeah, let me just share one more. And this one's
yeah,
actually not in the book, but I'm just going to share it because it's what's coming to me.
cool.
Massaging the ears is a really good energy balance. There are so many acupuncture points in our ears, and acupuncture points are just a place where energy is more concentrated. So I'm a person who cannot wake up in the morning. I wake up early, but I can't get up. Like I'm one of those people who's like, I can't get out of bed. It's just like morning's not my time. But massaging the ears, just kind of inside, out, on the back, on the front, wakes up all the organs, glands, and muscles in the
Oh,
body because you're working with the acupuncture points that correlate to different parts of the body. Now, I don't know which ones are which, but they're all in there. And so massaging them can really help just move any sluggish energy, which is, I think, what happens to me in the morning.
wow. That's
Easy.
great. Easy. I love it. Very cool.
Yeah,
All right, so let's jump into the second part of that
sure.
statement. Why do some people heal from emotional and physical issues while others don't?
Okay. So this comes back to what I was saying about being who we really are and accepting that person and turning inward. I mean, I did everything under the sun to heal physically, but I didn't necessarily do the emotional work. And I think I know that's why I didn't heal. You cannot address just the physical. And you cannot just take, I mean, you can just take medicine, but you cannot just take medicine and not do the other piece of it. When I asked Sanjeev Chopra to endorse my book, he said, I want to call you and I want to ask you a question about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to talk to Sanjeev. Like, this is such a big deal, you know? And he said to me, he basically asked me if I thought the body could heal itself without any medication or help from Western medicine. And I was really stuck because I didn't know what the right answer was. And I knew that him endorsing the book, after he had read it and really enjoyed it, but him endorsing it had to do with this because he's a medical doctor.
Right.
He teaches, he's at Harvard Medical School. And I said, I think the body can, but I think it's more important to meet your medicine halfway. I think it's more important to whatever alternative or Western medicine practices you're going with. It's the important thing is that you don't rely only on those, that you do the inner work, you show up and meet whatever you're trying to do externally halfway. And it was the right answer and he loved it and he decided to support and endorse my book. But that is really what we're saying. We're not saying that it's wrong to get external support. We're not saying it's wrong to go to any kind of treatment, whether it's for addiction or illness. We're not saying the external part is wrong. We're just saying that you have to show up and do at least as much work, if not more, as what you want everyone else who's helping you to do.
Mm.
And really that's the difference I see that I discovered between people who heal and people who don't. People who go back and look at what's going wrong inside of them and clearing that, whether it be meditation or reflection or energy therapy to clear those emotional blocks. Those are the people that I see get better. And that was the only way I got better. I had this radical stem cell treatment, which at that time was the only thing in the world of its kind. And it healed my body completely. But because I didn't do the inner work, I proved to myself and many other people, not by choice, but I proved that we will just re-manifest that problem again if we don't do the real work.
And so I love that you are talking about meeting both things halfway. I think that's so important. And I'm glad to see that that seems to be an attitude that's being taken more, especially amongst Westerners here who were very strongly against Western medicine. It's let's do it all natural. And again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we've unfortunately also seen some tragic cases, especially with children and younger people, that they did go no Western medicine, and it ended up with lives lost. So,
Yeah.
and actually, I was thinking while you're saying that, I saw a T-shirt where someone they were wearing it. It said "meditation over medication."
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I dig it. I like the shirt, but at the same time, some people need to take medication.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
it just made me think of that as meeting in the middle, because I personally did have to take medication for a while still having a daily meditation practice.
Yeah.
It was after I suffered a horrible relapse that literally almost took my life. So I needed to take a bit of medication for a year after that to realign things in my neurosystem. And once I felt comfortable, feeling better, I, under the guidance of a doctor, tapered off. And that was like, I don't know, over 4 years ago. And I take a multivitamin in the morning, and that's it. But I
Awesome.
don't, and that's great. I think that speaks volumes to the power of things like meditation and exercise and taking care of ourselves. But
Yes.
it's also important to honor the fact that some people do really need medication, either short or long term. So
Yes.
meeting in the middle, like you said, that's so important. So,
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, and I say this in my book, that medication and either even natural treatments or whatever treatments, they really they buy us a lot of time to turn inward
mm,
and do that work. And a lot of times they make that time more comfortable. And if that's what's needed, that's okay.
right.
That's totally fine. It's
Yeah.
just whatever works, whatever works for you. And oftentimes I see with clients that while they're doing the emotional work, their other treatments start working so much better because the emotional blocks, the subconscious blocks we have, like the addiction to illness or the addiction to anxiety or whatever it may be, that will prevent some pretty strong medications from working.
Yes, really.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. I think this segues nicely into what I wanted to end our conversation with, which is, of course, your new book. And I feel like even though we haven't specifically talked about it, so much of what we've covered is actually in the book already. So let's talk about that. I know your publisher, Llewellyn. They write that the book teaches readers how to achieve complete and permanent healing, which we've been talking about,
Yep.
by loving, accepting, and being themselves no matter what, which again we've talked about.
Yep.
But let's go a little deeper. What can readers expect from this book?
Sure. So, first of all, I'm like a new mom or something. Can I show the cover? Because I
Would you
just got it.
please show us the
Okay, sure.
cover?
So I
Wow,
finally, you know how it is. I finally got the real 3D version after many, many digital copies. So
that is
here's the
beautiful.
book. Thank you so much. Here's the book, and it's actually full of stories, insights, a lot of my experience of my own healing, and tons of exactly how to use specific techniques to address specific emotional blocks that keep people from healing. It's very, very specific because when I was healing, I read lots of books and was really on board with like, yes, I need to look at my beliefs and look at these past emotional experiences or traumas or whatever that I'm holding on to. And I need to like have more positive thinking and more positive feeling. And then I would get to the end of the book and I still wouldn't know how to do it, which then creates a feeling of, oh my gosh, I have this huge to-do list and I have no way to accomplish this. I don't have the tools. And so while I am not a natural technical writer, I dug deep into my brain and heart for this one, and I really spelled every technique out step by step with examples of how to use it and examples of how I used it, and with permission from clients, examples of how they used it, so that really anybody could integrate these techniques into their life and heal themselves on the inside.
Mm. And I love it. I had a chance to read it, an advanced copy. Thanks for sending one.
Thank
And
you for supporting it. It meant the world to
yeah,
me.
of course. Like I said in the beginning, knowing you as a person outside of this for a few years now, that meant a lot to me because I know your heart, and I know your compassion and your uh, both compassion and passion for what you do, and it excites me to see the work you're doing in the world. So, and I was so jazzed, as you're holding it up, there's Bernie Siegel's name right on the front. I mean, how cool is that? That's
It's super cool. The funny thing is, my dad was a therapist, and when I was growing up, I remember that pink book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles,
yeah,
on my dad's bookshelf. Like,
yes,
I just remember, I like have such a strong memory of that book.
yeah,
And so when I went to ask for endorsements, I was like, I'm gonna go for it. And I told him the story of the pink book, and I was like, I remember it. Like, I feel like somehow that energy and that information in that book was part of my journey, even though I didn't read it until I was older. But
right.
yeah, so cool how everything comes together like
Full
that.
circle. I think that's awesome. Yeah. So, Amy, I mean, well, first of all, we'll include the link, but can you tell viewers your website address?
Sure. My website address is www and then my name, Amy, AMY, middle initial B like boy or Beth. That's my middle name. And my last name, Scher, SCHER.com. So amybscher.com.
And you learned something new because I've known you for years, and even in the beginning, I said Amy Scher. I've always thought your last name
Oh,
was
that's funny.
Scher, but
So
it's
it's
Cher,
like
like the
Cher.
diva.
Yeah, it's like Cher, like from Sonny and Cher, but without the S. That's what
Okay.
I tell people.
Well, my apologies, but if it makes you feel better, people mispronounce my name all the time. So
It doesn't bother me. I will answer to Cher, no problem.
right on. Well, Amy, so I do encourage people to check out your website because besides just this wonderful book, you have a lot of resources there for people who stop by. You also do work with people one on one, and they can learn more about that at your website. You speak. Do you have anything coming up you'd like to share with viewers?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I actually have an online course that's a companion to the book. It's a
Cool.
10-week online course where we actually walk through all the practices and do practice sessions, and it's video and audio. And that's for people who maybe want a little more hand holding, who want a little more explanation, who can't read the physical, the words, the physical version of the book,
Sure.
who take instruction better when somebody teaches them. And so I have that, and it's easier when we don't do things alone. This
Right.
is healing us some tough stuff. Sometimes I always say it's possible. It is possible for everyone, but I never say it's easy. I mean, there are times of ease, but there are times when it's hard, when you're having a meltdown on the kitchen floor because you just can't handle any more pain in your heart. And it's cool to have that extra guidance. I know there are some book clubs that are doing this book, reading this book as a book club read. And I'm, willing to go on, visit any book club with Skype or FaceTime or however you want to get me there to say hi and answer some questions. But if you're the kind of person who feels better doing it in a group or with extra guidance, there's the course. Otherwise, all the information you need is in the book.
Awesome. Well, Amy, I deeply bow to the work you're doing and the service you're providing in the world. It is much needed and appreciated. And again, I thank you for taking the time today to join us on the Healing Journey web series.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here. It was a true pleasure.
Thanks, Amy.